Hello, all you wonderful people. Now, just before Nigel Farage was due to hold a Reform UK press conference today, Ben Habib dropped a political bombshell right in his lap. This will no doubt have Nigel Farage sputtering feathers, because one of his colleagues and confidants, Ben Habib, basically hold Reform UK below the waterline on social media barely 20 minutes before Reform UK chairman Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage himself were due to make their press splash. And no wonder they were at pains to explain how Nigel was democratising Reform UK, and I'll come to that in a minute. The upshot here is that Ben Habib is walking away from Nigel Farage and Reform UK for several reasons, with the two fundamental issues being that 1. Nigel publicly considers Brexit to be done, but Ben doesn't agree with him, especially because of the Northern Ireland Protocol. And 2. Is the non-democratic setup of Reform UK as a limited company, where Nigel Farage owns the majority of the shares, so controls the party to the point he chooses the leader, the chairman and just about everyone else. And when that political grenade arrived in the room, I reckon there would have been a hurried redrafting of speeches for Reform UK to ensure democratising the party was included, as it was. Anyway, what troubles me is that Ben Habib says that he was shut down from speaking to Reform UK supporters at events. Is this the way a democratic political party behaves? Anyway, I'll be playing the full Ben Habib video in a moment so we can discuss it. But first, what do you think, Richard?
Okay, so a good news and bad news day for Reform UK. Good news, obviously, for them with Dame Andrea Jenkyns jumping ship from the Tory party over to Reform. But then bad news because it only to have its beloved former party chairman, Ben Habib, cut ties with the party. I do think that Ben's departure from Reform has been on the cards for quite a while, seeing as he aligns himself with the Unite the Kingdom movement and with the ordinary working man, whilst the leadership of Reform UK does, well, they certainly do not seem to have the same sort of love for us lot, those in the Unite the Kingdom movement. The problem Reform now faces is that Ben Habib was one of their most popular, characters and well respected by Reform supporters. Many sections of Reform have hoped that indeed Ben Habib would lead the Reform after Nigel himself has moved on to other things, possibly on to America, who knows. And yes, that he would replace him. But alas, I think the position of the next party leader is earmarked for Zia Yusuf. Yeah, I could be wrong, but that's the way I see it, and that's the way it looks to me, and I know that I'm not alone in that assessment. In this video, which you're about to play, Jeff, which was put up on X and on YouTube by Ben Habib, Habib himself drew clear water ideologically between himself and Nigel Farage, not just over Brexit, but also over mass deportations, which Farage has utterly ruled out, citing logistical issues with such a manoeuvre and that it's an undeliverable promise. Whilst Habib says that he did say in this video you're about to see now that he does indeed agree with mass deportations, regardless of any potential logistic barriers to entry, and that such an undertaking must go ahead no matter what difficulties should arise. Yes, and he believes that the process must begin. I'll leave that there for now. Jeff, if you want to play the video, possibly.
Yeah, I will in a moment. Yeah, there are a few pieces of clear blue water now, or clear light blue or dark blue water, whatever it is, between Ben Habib and Nigel Farage and Reform UK.
Yeah.
And it comes, and a lot of people will be going, oh, here we go, splitting the vote again. But when beliefs are so deep on these matters, it's very difficult to sort of shy away from these big differences. if Nigel Farage thinks Brexit's done and that whoever's here is here and it doesn't matter, and Ben Habib doesn't, then there's a lot of clear blue water there, and we've got to decide where we as a country want to go and who we are going to vote for. It's a very difficult position to be in. I mean, I did leave a voice message for Ben Habib, and hopefully we'll have a chat in the next few days when because he said he was in an aeroplane at the time. So we'll see what comes out of that, if we can get together and do a session like this with him. But it is concerning in that we've now got what I'm looking at is I'm wondering whether Reform UK is now moving towards the Tory sort of area. It's all done and play the game, and I don't know. I'm just asking the question. It's up to you for yourself to decide the answer. Anyway, what I'll do now is I'll play the video, if I can find it, and then this is the full video. It's 12 minutes long, but it's quite powerful and it's well worth watching, even if you watched it before. So I'll just play it now.
Good morning, folks. I got into politics to get Brexit done. I could see in 2019 that Theresa May simply wasn't going to deliver it, so I threw my hat in with the Brexit Party. And I stayed in politics because Boris Johnson, contrary to all his promises, didn't get Brexit done. The two deals he signed with the European Union left Northern Ireland behind, over 1 million British citizens thrown under a bus by his withdrawal agreement. And it also hitched the rest of the United Kingdom to the regulatory hip of the European Union, committing to staying in line with them on state aid, competition, employment and environmental law. Yes, he committed us to the net zero target in international treaty with the EU. In that same agreement, he also committed us to staying in the European Convention of Human Rights, paying money into the European Defence Fund for the development of European military hardware and software, and a whole lot else besides. By no measure could that set of agreements be regarded as getting Brexit done. And this is a fundamental ideological difference between Reform UK and Nigel Farage on one side and me on the other. Nigel says that Brexit was done. It's just that we didn't take advantage of it. We didn't move far away enough from the EU in order to reveal the benefits of Brexit. But I completely disagree. I can't make any case for Nigel's position, and it's not just semantics. I can't make any case for it because Northern Ireland's been left behind. What kind of country are we if we don't fight for British citizens? We are knout if we're not prepared to stand for that fight. I also have concerns about Reform UK, then the Brexit Party, because of the structure of the party. As people will probably know by now, Reform UK Limited is a limited company. The political party is a limited company. It has 15 shares, 9 of which are owned by Nigel. And it was Nigel's control of that party, 60% control of that party, that enabled him to stand down 317 candidates in 2019 against Boris Johnson without any consultation of any of us in the party. And he may have had good reasons for doing so in his mind to prevent Jeremy Corbyn getting into office. But actually what we did was deliver Boris Johnson into office and deliver into being the withdrawal agreement, which has thrown Northern Ireland under a bus. So I have always had a problem with the structure of Reform UK, and I've always had a problem with the view that Brexit's done. These are fundamental differences. So when Richard Tice approached me in late 2022 to join Reform UK, which had then changed its name from Brexit Party to Reform UK, I said I would only do so if Nigel gave up his shares in the party, democratised it, and that we had a consensual way of running the party. After some discussion, Richard came back to me and said Nigel had refused to sell down his shares into some kind of broader ownership, and further discussions took place, and eventually I agreed to join the party on the strength of a letter that Richard as leader wrote to me saying that the party would be run on a consensual basis, that there'd be no deals done with the Tories, that we would fight for Brexit, that Brexit hadn't been done, and that we would fight for Northern Ireland. And so I joined Reform UK, and we had a great time. We went from 6% in the polls in March 2023 to 16% in the polls just before the general election. Richard and I actually led a very successful movement. We created a very successful, broad movement across the country. And then Nigel reappointed himself leader of the party on the 3rd of June. And I knew at that point, frankly, and my inner circle could easily testify to this, that I was extremely concerned when Nigel came back, because I had fundamental differences with Nigel on the issue of Brexit, fundamental issues with the way the party was owned and operated. And so, again, privately, I wrote to Richard and to Nigel, I think, in June, just at the beginning of the election, saying, look, when the election's done, we've got to democratise the party. This cannot go on. And I made a similar call towards the tail end of the general election. And to his credit, Nigel, on the 5th of July, declared that they would democratise the party. And on the 22nd of August, Zia Youssef, the new chairman, went on GB News and declared that he had the finest legal minds working, I think he said, day and night on producing a fantastic constitution. But when that constitution turned up on, I think, the 18th of September, I don't know how I remember these dates, but I do. When that constitution turned up on the 18th of September, I realised it was a document that I had looked at a year and a half before and rejected. It simply didn't really work. There'd been a few tweaks made, but it doesn't work. And it absolutely did not have the finest legal minds on it at all. I would question whether it had any legal minds looking at it. At about the same time, Nigel also declared in a little piece to camera that he did that he would convert Reform UK Limited from a company limited by shares to a company limited by guarantee, and that it would be opened up to the so-called members to actually become genuine members because they would collectively own the party. Well, here we are at the end of November, and actually that conversion hasn't taken place. By the way, my lawyer tells me that that conversion cannot take place. You can't convert a company limited by shares to one limited by guarantee. You have to set up a new company. But no new company has been set up. Certainly no new applications have been made to the Electoral Commission. And even the slightly poor document that passes for a constitution has not been put to the Electoral Commission for its approval. So as far as I can see, no tangible steps have been taken to deliver what Nigel and Zia promised they would do, which is adopt this constitution and convert the party into one being owned, genuinely owned by its members. A few other ideological issues have developed between Nigel and Reform on one side and me on the other. And they're these. In an interview, Nigel said that he wasn't against the rapid demographic change in the United Kingdom. It was the cultural aspect of the United Kingdom, the cultural integrity of the United Kingdom that concerned him. Well, for me, the rapid demographic change in the UK is the other side of the same coin of the difficulties we're facing culturally. I don't see how you can separate them. Again, you might see this as semantics. I see it as quite a fundamental point. In the same interview, Nigel said that he was not in favour of mass deportations. Well, I'm firmly in favour of mass deportations. Anyone in this country who is here illegally must be detained and deported. Again, this is not semantics. I think Nigel in a subsequent interview said that there are problems, logistical problems in detaining and deporting so many people. I think there's over 1 million people in the United Kingdom illegally. But I concede that point readily. Of course, there are logistical issues, but that doesn't mean you don't do it. You begin doing it and you keep doing it until it's done, even if it takes a long time. That is the path on which the United Kingdom must set itself. And then I had a particular issue, I think, with Richard Tice saying that he described the gathering on the 20th of September in Whitehall in Parliament Square as that lot, eschewing, I think, the support of our movement, people, valid British citizens who no doubt voted Reform UK. He regarded them as unpalatable, and I imagine in an attempt to sanitize Reform UK, he was prepared to effectively throw them under a bus. And I have an issue with that. I think we've got to be true to what we believe in. We've got to say it the way it is. This country has had enough of political expediency. We need people to tell it as it is. It is not about political expediency. It is about doing the right thing. And I also have an issue with the way Reform seems obsessed with recruiting Tories. Nigel put out a letter a few weeks ago saying the 1,300 Tory councillors who are coming up for election in May, don't take your chances with the Conservative Party, join Reform UK. And I think there have been a few more defections from the Tory party to Reform, and all of these are trumpeted. But it's our people that should be trumpeted. It's the movement that we created that should be trumpeted, not the people joining from the Tory party who are part of a party that delivered the country into the peril in which we now find ourselves. So I can't understand this obsession with recruiting Tories. Sure, there are some good Tories that are worth recruiting. Suella Braverman, for example. But why would you want to open the party up wholesale to defections from the Conservative Party? And it's also perhaps a slightly quaint approach I have, but I think the leadership of Reform is obliged to the movement it created. I think it is absolutely vital that we understand the movement owes us nothing. We owe the movement. And if we stand for the constitutional sovereign democratic unit that is the United Kingdom, then we must be a democracy ourselves. We can't say we trust the people of the UK to run the UK, but we don't trust the people of the UK to direct the leadership of Reform UK. That just doesn't wash. It's ideologically, fundamentally inconsistent. And the final issue I have, it's a personal issue, so forgive me, is that I discovered over the last few days that actually HQ at Reform has forbidden the new branches they've set up from having me speak to them. I don't know why, because at every meeting that I've been to, I have done nothing other than bang the drum of our message and bang the drum of the party. But it seems these criticisms that I have, ideological as well as constitutional criticisms I have of the party, are an affront to them. So they have shut me down from speaking to the very people whom I galvanized into a movement alongside Richard and others, whom I galvanized into a movement. And I find that, frankly, unacceptable. And I would say I'm resigning as a member of Reform. I can't resign as a member of Reform because I'm not a member. No one's a member. The only members are Richard and Nigel. But I think that their prohibition on my speaking, their prohibition on my free speech, their reluctance to democratize, their ideological differences with me, now leaves me no option but to say I'm not affiliated with Reform, I'm afraid. I am ideologically separate from Reform. They're not treading the path that I think needs to be trodden, and I fear for their fascination with recruiting Tories, and I fear for their reluctance to democratise and really trust the movement that we created. And so very sadly, I am no longer a part of the movement. I'm a part of the movement. I'm no longer part of Reform UK, whatever that means, because as I say, you can't actually be a member. Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry to deliver what I suspect might be bad news to some of you. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. It didn't sound particularly bitter to me, but I'll bring Richard back in again. So what did you make of that, Richard?
Yes, I was watching it earlier and I found it... it's very difficult to disagree with much of what Ben Habib said. I'd like to go straight here, actually, onto one point, though. With mass deportations in mind, because that is one of the main points of Clearwater, I have this question to ask. If you were to poll Reform UK voters on whether they want mass deportations or not, I would hazard a guess that the results would be overwhelmingly in favour of the mass deportations. And please leave a comment in the live chat if you are still a Reform supporter on whether or not you support mass deportations or not. And we will look at those in a moment. So say yes to mass deportations or no And that's if you are a current reform voter. Okay. You see, the mass deportations issue could indeed be a sticking point for Nigel Farage and for reform, especially if Ben Habib has further political ambitions, be they with a new political party or joining an existing party, taking over an existing party. And when I say ambitions, I don't mean the selfish nest feathering type of ambitions, but a genuine desire to save Britain from collapse. Now then, this is the part that really got to me earlier. I don't know if you know this, Jeff. Earlier on GB News, Nigel Farage was interviewed by Michelle Dewberry. And after gushing over Dame Andrea Jenkins, Farage told her, basically he said he threw a barbed comment at Ben Habib, and it wasn't very nice. He described Ben Habib's exit from reform as the real champagne moment of the day. Now, this is a day in which, of course, Dame Andrea Jenkins has joined reform. Yet this was the highlight of the day for him, the champagne moment. And Farage also said, and I quote, he, Ben Habib, has gone very bitter, very twisted. It's very sad. The fact that he's walked away, frankly, is a huge relief. Okay, so, I mean, yeah, Oh, well, I think we can safely say that's Ben Habib crossed off the reform Christmas party list this year. Look, I'm going to try and remain impartial on this. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment, everybody. And I want to ask a question, and also, please, in the comment section, can you tell me how many of you think that Nigel's comments are justified or not justified? So, Jeff, over to you, mate. I'm going to have a little look, see how many people want the mass deportations here. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
With you, Jeff.
Yeah. No, it's it's obvious that there is clear blue water on a philosophical front between the two, and it comes down to what does the voter want? What route does the voter want us to follow? The nation to follow? Do we just want to follow one person or a set of policies that would do the best thing for the country? Doesn't matter which person you're talking about, the same argument applies. What you've got to say is, do you want to see, anyone with no right to abide here, to stay here, to be gone back to their home countries? Now, if one side is saying we'll do that and the other is saying not, then that should decide how you're going to vote. And it's also a trust issue as well. Which one of them do you trust more? So I know this is very difficult. We're going through a very blistering time in UK politics, especially for those on the right. The hard left, which is now the Labour Party, has controlled the narrative now. They with 20% of the vote, they have control of the country. They've managed that. They've done it. They've achieved it. They've done it. They are cleverer than we are because they did it. They achieved what they wanted to achieve by infiltrating every single organisation in the country at top levels, and we just let them do it. If we want to turn this round, I think we've got to push the Overton window right the other way and really go for them.
Yes,
anything else? Yeah.
Comment here by Midge Magoo, and it's a very good one. Labour must be loving all this. Absolutely. This is the type of thing they could only dream of. I mean, they're in the middle of this incredible disarray themselves, yet this is a gift given to them to see that one of their main competitors now is in the middle of potentially of civil war. This could be a civil war within reform. It's a horrible thing to say. I mean, a lot of us have wanted reform to work, to do what the people want, but things have turned a little ugly there. Whether they can turn this around, I don't know. I hope so. I still hope so. But going through the comments here, I'd say about 85% to 90% of people were saying yes, of current reform voters. It's not a real poll, but they said that they do believe in mass deportations. So that proves that Nigel Farage has got an issue now with his own voter base on this matter of mass deportations. Also, I asked how many people are think that Nigel Farage's comments were justified regarding Ben Habib, and most said that they were not justified. A few did say they were justified. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of very disappointed people today in Reform, very disappointed in Ben Habib for a number of reasons relating to his departure. But there are those in Reform who absolutely love Ben Habib, and outside of Reform as well. He's got so much respect, that man has. So yeah, it's a very...
And the big thing for me is I know I'm part of it. I was one of the main speakers at the official launching and signing of the pledge. Ben Habib was there and has signed the pledge.
Yes.
A basic common sense document about how we believe that the country is formed and how it should be structured and run. It's not a new idea. It's just using centuries of what we've done to say this is generally what the people of Britain are and what they want. And if you read it and you go, well, I agree with that, sign it. And it's very important that that people do that at thepledge.org.uk. But Ben, Andrew Bridgen and Peter Whittle were straight there, read it and said, this is common sense, and signed it. And so they've got one tick in the box from me anyway.
Something has changed in Reform since the USF has come into play. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know what's going on, but something has changed. I mean, it's not... granted, Ben Habib's gone, but you also have people like Wayne Towler, who has moved on. He still remains very loyal, of course, to Reform, and I can see that.
He was there at the recent rally. Which one was that? When he was the farmers' rally, he was there, still championing Reform.
Yeah, absolutely. But clearly something's not right for Ben. But the thing is, do you know what? Sometimes there are grey areas in life where you can go, okay, things aren't right with Reform, but I'm still going to vote for them for now. I'm still going to do it. But for how long can that continue? And what if, as is clear with Ben Habib, from his departure, what if all of a sudden it becomes intolerable for the individual to say, I'm still going to support this political party. I am not, this is, as you said in the video earlier, this is not just a football team. We're not talking about that. We're talking about politics. It's a very different matter. And it is good to be highly critical and analytical of our political parties and their performances and the performances of those who lead them, and the ideological changes within political parties. Because don't forget, Labour was once a very different political party. So were the Tories. Parties change. You've got to keep your eye on them.
Keep your eye on every single party and every single political leader at all times, especially in the areas that you disagree with, because every political party out there, if someone tells me they're 100% behind every single policy and every single jotting or every single dot and cross in a manifesto of a political party, I know they're lying, because they're not. They can't. There will always be something they disagree with, have doubts about, and where those issues are concerned, keep an eye on your political leaders.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question then, Jeff. What do you think's next for Ben Habib?
Now, that's an interesting question, especially as when we were at the pledge, when he said that he was going to do all he can to get the pledge, the sort of the basis of the pledge through and into the national psyche. He was saying he'll do it however he can, even if it means starting his own political party, which, at the time I thought, whoa, because, none of this had come out then, although I knew there was sort of a bit of rocky ground there. But it'd be interesting to see how that does develop in the coming days. Now that he's walked away from Reform, he's either going to have to pick a political party to join and to go with, or he's going to have to take the plunge and start his own. And we'll see how that develops.
Yes. I mean, if you've got the pledge, though, as a centerpiece of a political party, that's a damn good basis for any political party. I mean, it'd be difficult to vote against such a party or not to vote for that party, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
If it came against Reform versus, say, a Ben Habib or whichever political party he joins that was then pushing the pledge, it'd be, it'd be very difficult to vote Reform. It would. How could you do that when there's another party which is representing the actual core values that you believe in? Difficult situation. There's still time for Farage to turn this around. He has to. Otherwise, yes, the vote. I'm not splitting the vote here. We're just having discussions. Otherwise, he will split the vote. Farage himself will split the vote by not catering for the demands of his voters. If he's not aligned with his own voter base, then, as I said, it's not a football team. You don't just mindlessly, unquestionably follow a political party. You have to think about these things.
Yeah, and for me, the most important thing is, do you think that politician believes in the UK, believes in the future of the UK, and is going to put themselves at the service of the UK? And those are really important questions. For most politicians, I'll say I believe in the UK while I'm working for myself. And you have to decide which politicians are actually doing that. And remember, Andrew Bridgen has said in the past that as far as a lot of major politicians in Westminster are concerned, it's a game. It's just a game. But they're playing with livelihoods. They're playing with lives. And they think this is just a monopoly game. Really, they seriously do. And we need to wipe those people out. We just need to get rid of them. And that goes for the civil servants too. I reckon they're playing that all big political game as well.
I mean, here's a comment here by 10MB UK. I signed the pledge and I will definitely be voting for Reform. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I don't know how I'm going to vote. I don't know what the future holds. As I said, if there's an election tomorrow, yes, I'm voting Reform. That's it. Still,
but it depends in 6 months' time whether you still think the same thing, doesn't it? Really?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to be, keeping a close eye on all of this.
Yeah, there's a lot of opinions here between the two. And, Andrew Bridgen features as well, saying, Andrew Bridgen is our Trump. Who knows? This is the thing about parties and personalities, who you comes down to who you like half the time.
Well, it does, yeah.
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is a fragmented right. Okay, the right is completely fragmented. The left is as well. We've got the two sides of the political spectrum. They're just completely fragmented. Nothing is joining up. Nothing's coming together.
This all comes from serving minorities wherever you are, as opposed to serving the majority. No one is statesmanlike enough to stand up and say the majority wants this and this is how we're going to do it. And when the minorities kick off, they should just say, back in your box. I'm sorry. We're not here the majority is not here to cater for the series of minorities. It's just not. And if you cater properly for the majority, the country will flourish.
Yes.
That's my view anyway.
No, I totally agree. I think we've got some interesting times coming up here, Jeff, politically.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to talk about the next up until the May elections, we've got a lot to talk about. So I think everyone needs to, just hang fire, because there's so much tension that you can read this in the comments. Everyone saying, I love Reform, don't split the vote. Other people saying, on here, stuff Reform. Yeah, okay. Let's just see how it all pans out, shall we? Just keep watching.
This is a good question from Dino in the Tube. If they believe in the UK, they would have been at the marches to support true Brits.
Well,
if they're not there,
yeah.
That
is, that's my. I'm trying to remain impartial here.
Yeah, I know.
I really am, but it's very difficult because yes, a lot of us were thrown under the bus. Those of us who support and have been trying to promote the United Kingdom movement and even the pledge, because let's face it, if Farage and Tice and co are not, and Zia Youssef are not interested in the pledge, what message does that send? What does that say
Yeah.
to everyone? Okay, so you don't have anything to do with us. You don't like our values. Well, here's some new values. And I did make a note of something earlier that I was going to say, because, I mean, it's also worth noting that Nigel Farage has been critical of multiculturalism, but of late he has been very multicultural in his rhetoric.
Yeah.
And again, a sticking point for a lot of people who are, look, a lot of the comments coming here are from Reform voters who are annoyed. These are people, a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to move over to UKIP. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But all it tells me is that people are annoyed right now at Nigel Farage. And there's some people annoyed at Ben Habib. Let's not mince our words here. There's two sides to this. And there we go. I'm trying to be pragmatic here.
Yeah, I know. Trying to put it all at some stage or other, though, we are all going to have to come down on one side or the other and decide how we want to do this. And the political arguments, and that will mean that the political parties, especially on the right, are going to have to come out with what they really think and really lay it on the line for the voters. If they don't, we're just going to end up doing the same thing time after time. Anyway.
Well, maybe the answer lies more in the cultural movement. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cultural movement should be dictating how people vote, as far as I'm concerned. The cultural movement is the most important part of this. The pledge, the uniting of the kingdom, bringing people together peacefully.
Yeah.
That's what we need to be doing, and concentrating this and build it. It's had a setback, to be honest with you, with obviously with Tommy being inside, because he was a very important part of this movement and a hero to many in this country. But we know what's going on. We do know what's going on. They're trying to stifle this movement, and I think that's even more reason than ever to push forward. So come on, people, keep uniting. We're going to have disagreements. It's going to happen. We're going to disagree with each other over which political party or organization is the way forward. But we've got to keep it positive, all right? Anyway, that's me done.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought we'd air this one just to show you. I mean, I'm not sure how many people had seen that Ben Habib video. As soon as I saw it, I went, oh, I think this is going to be more important than people realize, this interjection by Ben Habib, because he has his views, and I've met him, and as far as I'm concerned, he's as straight as they come. So, it's a very difficult situation, and it's a pity that this did come about. And it's, that's all I'm going to say on that one for the moment. But I'll see if I can have a chat with him and go from there.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on, Richard. Tell everyone.
Oh, okay. All right. So, I couldn't wait for this moment. All right, you lot. What I want you to do is like video. Right. Once you've liked video, right, you go over and you press subscribe button. Once you've subscribed, you click the all option on the little bell. And that means you'll get a notification every time we put up new video. There we go. Sorry for the change in accent, but I've got northern blood as well. I can do that.
Anyway, thanks very much, everyone, for watching and taking part and airing your views. That's really important. And I hope we give you a vehicle for doing that. So on that note, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Goodbye.
Goodbye.